On your website, you said, quote, "Late in life, I became myself." Explain that. Or
that was my cryptic way of putting in a link to a page that explains everything.
Which is?
Which is that when I started out, I was a guy. And I worked on all these things and did all these accomplishments for a long time. I'm still doing them, not as Jessica, is what I'll say. And you can look at the website and it explains it in great detail. And I sort of realized early in my life that I wasn't happy being male and I wanted to be a woman. But I didn't think that I could. I'm 6'1", and I also wanted to get a lot of stuff done in my life. I wanted to discover stuff in the sky and be an astronomer. I wanted to get bike paths built. And those were most important to me. And I decided if I made any big changes in my life, that would be harder to do. So I did those things. And it turns out that once you've done things like that, people are a lot more accepting of unusual changes in your life. And
so you thought that maybe it would be easier to get those things done as a man?
Well, without changing.
Or without
just
changing.
To stay where I was.
To stay where you were, stay in your comfort zone.
And do it. And it was fine because I was pretty happy. I mean, I got married twice, and I was happy being married. I was happy being a parent to a daughter who considered me a not quite, she has a term for it, but I don't remember now, but not always gender normative. That's what she said. I was not a gender normative parent. And she didn't say that until she was 24 or so. But anyway, when she'd had some gender studies and things under her belt. But it's been an interesting thing. So I transitioned from male to female 4 years ago. And I was really ready to do it by then. And I knew my marriage, well, we had a deal. I was married, and if I transitioned, we were going to not be married.
Okay.
And so
that was your second marriage?
My second marriage, and that's the one I had my daughter. So I was married for 22 years. And so we sort of figured out when the best time for us to get divorced would be, and sort of timed things. And they happened. And as soon as I found out...
Was that the best time to get divorced based on your daughter that you had?
Yeah, we wanted her to be away in college, but almost done.
Okay.
Which was the plan. So I was married to a psychotherapist who did a lot of family therapy and couples therapy. And so she talked to her friends and colleagues and got advice, and she knew a lot anyway. And so we just worked things out. And I wasn't like really easy, but it happened. And I was really surprised at how accepted I was by everybody. I mean,
it's people at work, people in the bicycling community,
people in the bicycling,
your friends,
people in the open space community, my friends, people in astronomy. I mean, I have this whole disparate group of people. Like, you would think open space and bicycling go together, but there's almost nobody that's in both. A lot of people in the open space community bike, but they're not activists.
And define open space community.
So that's people that are trying to get parks properly maintained, do programming in parks, nonprofit organizations. And I'm pretty involved in a lot of those. And I work, I just had a meeting last week looking at the parks in Boston, and it turns out I'm involved in all the parks along the southern part of the city, from Brook Farm to Stony Brook Reservation to the Neponset River Reservation. I mean, I'm working on projects in all of those places. And so so I'm in this other community besides the biking community, and I actually spend more time nowadays. I'm biking all the time. I'm like involved in bike stuff, but I really do a lot of open space. And I've been doing that for a long time too. So everybody knows me there. They've all been great. Everybody in bicycling has been good. Some people have been a little bit surprised. Everybody actually was surprised. I mean, nobody knew that I was going to do something like this. And, but they all took it.
They all took it well.
Well, and I think I've got more friends than I ever did.
And you said your cycling work didn't suffer at all.
No, I mean, I got more involved because all of a sudden now there's a big push to get women bicycling And so I'm in the middle of that.
Okay.
And, you know, it's natural. So this is how I bicycle. I'm biking 20 miles a day, wearing a skirt and a blouse, and, you know, it's fine. Got a cute helmet. You know, I just like try to be an example in a certain way.
Right,
and,
right.
And I just do that. And so it's been a lot of fun. So I've like got involved with Girls Row, gotten involved with the Women's Bike Festival. I swept the 30-mile bike festival ride on Saturday.
Right.
So, and I was involved doing a similar thing. Actually, I swept the 30-mile ride last year too. So I'm pretty involved. So I've switched my involvement a little bit. It's changed, but it hasn't moved away. It's sort of more added on more things, which is also true in the rest of my life. Like usually I've kept doing the old things and maybe changed priorities a little bit.
So let me ask you this. We're going to go to break in about 1 minute or so.
Okay, I'll be quick.
So has anything in your life relative to cycling, has it gotten worse because of your change?
No. No,
okay.
it's all been better.
It's all been better.
Yeah, it has. I've all of a sudden felt so good I feel better about myself. And so I'm involved more at the national level than I ever used to be. I could have been. I was in a position where I could have gotten involved, but I never did.
Okay.
So I started going to the National Bike Summit and the National Women's Bike Forum every year. And, you know, so I'm getting involved in those groups too. So it's been a really interesting some interesting changes in my life, but often an amplification of stuff I'm doing.
Great.
So I've never been on a show like this before, and now I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always want, you know, more women cyclists. We always want more women cyclists.
Well, I just consider myself doing something extreme to increase the number of women cyclists.
Great. Increasing the number of women cyclists. We are not done yet with Jessica Mink. We're going to take a short break and come back with some closing comments. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you've been following this fantastic guest tonight, Jessica Mink, and we are going to have some closing comments. And one thing we have not talked about, we talked about bike trails, Boston, being a transgender, and now let's talk about your fabulous career. What do you do, Jessica? I just think this is just fantastic.
Well, it started when I was 7, and the first astronauts were selected. And I also got my first rock collection from a prospector in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So it's like sort of romantic. And I decided what I wanted to do was study the solar system, like when I was 7. And I drifted around, not always thinking that, until I got to college and found out that I wasn't smart enough to be a particle physicist. So I had a fallback. I went to MIT because I knew I could do particle physics. I didn't like that. I could do planetary science. If I didn't like that, I could be do architecture, which I was also really interested in. And so I fell back to planetary science, and I got really involved in it and had a really good time, studied Mars real seriously. And I was sort of like, my problem was I was sort of a generalist. I wanted to learn all the different ways you could learn about planets and not focus too much on one. But I did do a master's thesis studying the composition of Mars was the goal. It didn't work real well because it was a brand new instrument that was sort of a little bit ahead of its time. But not dissimilar from the kinds of things I do now. So what
do you do now? In layman's terms,
okay, So what I do now is
because you're an astronomer.
I'm an astronomer. I'm not an astrophysicist. I'm real careful to make a distinction. But what I do is I help people who are other astronomers and astrophysicists figure out where things are in the sky. I both help them sort of decode what's the information in images and learn where things are in direction.
So where's Mars from here?
That's a good question. My computer knows, but I don't.
Oh, okay. But if you were to put some
I could just say, yeah, I have got a program that'll tell me where Mars is.
Okay, and it'll tell you exactly where it is, like how many miles it is from where you're sitting.
Right, and
the exact coordinates.
Kilometers probably, but yeah.
Okay, and the exact coordinates.
Exact coordinates, they've been given time from a specific place on Earth because it matters where you are on Earth.
Okay.
And what time of day it is because the Earth's spinning and moving, and anyway, it gets complicated pretty quickly, which is why I do it and not everybody does. And I also look at spectra from stars and galaxies and figure out how fast they're moving toward us or away from us. So one project, which I've been involved in a long time, is looking at the large-scale structure of the universe and where galaxies are relative to where we are. And the other thing that it's used for a lot is looking at stars inside our galaxy and figuring out whether they have another star around them or planets. Mm-hmm. And so some of the first planets that were discovered using this technique of watching stars. Stars and planets rotate around the center of mass of the system. So they don't the planets don't rotate around a star. They rotate, and the star rotates. So they sort of are opposing, and they go around. The same in the solar system. The sun moves more because of Jupiter than because of the Earth, but it does move as it goes around. And you can measure that difference in motion with spectra of light from the stars. And that's what I do. I write the software that figures that out. I write the software that processes the spectra from the telescope. So my big thing is writing software.
That's huge.
And so I have 3 claims to fame in this whole astronomical software thing. One is between where I am now and doing my thesis, I worked with a group for 8 years that, among other things, found the rings around the planet Uranus.
We got 30 seconds left.
And I also have written a lot of astronomical software that people use. That was my third thing. And the second thing I did is I wrote part of the X Windows system that's on every Linux computer. And if you do a man Xterm, the Xterm's part, I wrote part of that. You'll find out what my name was before I transitioned.
All right, last question before we let you go.
Yeah.
Do you ever do night rides on your bike and then you're looking up at the galaxy?
No.
You know,
I sometimes do things at open spaces that, like, I think we're thinking about doing something. We've been thinking about doing something in August at Brook Farm during a meteor shower in August, but we haven't set it up yet. And I do the midnight ride some years, which is a fun ride to do that starts at Copley Square.
I've heard a lot
Saturday
about it.
in August. It's going to be fun.
Jessica, thank you so much. Again tonight, hopefully you've caught all of our show. If not, you can catch it on Monday at 10 a.m. And of course, you can always watch it on our SCAT TV website. Our guest tonight was Jessica Mink. Thank you so much. What a great person. Cyclist, bicycle advocate, astronomer, transgender, living your life, living the dream. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great night, and remember to always ride safe.